Well, the tax and bank fraud trial of one-time Trump campaign chair Paul Manafort entering its second week tomorrow. Week one featured explosive testimony from Manafort's bookkeeper and prosecutors looking to call his former business partner Rick Gates to the stand. All this as the defense gears up to present its case. Let's bring in now our legal panel, Fox News legal analyst Mercedes Colwin and David Bruno, defense attorney and former prosecutor. Good to see you both. David, I'll start with you. Sum up week one. How did it go for Manafort? How did it go for the government? Any surprises?
Went great for the government, horrible for Manafort. I mean, they started the presentation with a number of vendors that Manafort paid through accounts in Cyprus that he failed to register or even declare. And then he's paying for real estate, clothing, all kinds of personal expenses. Very bad. Then they followed with the bookkeeper and two accountants who essentially just gave information about his financial dealings. At one point, an accountant who had been given immunity by the government actually said that she was complicit in the bank fraud. The government has been putting this case together. It's been coming in clean. Not good for Manafort.
Mercedes, your summary of week one.
Do you know, it's amazing because at the very crux of the defense, it's all going to be about the plea deals that have been done. The cornerstone of the prosecutor's defense is looking at Heather, who actually one of the accountants that came forward and testified against Manafort. And she was, as David said she was complicit in making these tax forms that were illegitimate and obviously unlawful. But at the final analysis, what the defense is going to come forward and say, that's a plea deal. And if you bring Rick Gates to testify against the Manafort, he has a plea deal too. So all that you'll hear on the defense side is over and over again, there are plea deals. There's an incentive for these individuals to give information that could be damaging to Manafort. Why? Because that's what they were trying to do in order to make sure that they could avoid prosecution. So it's this kind of momentum and this kind of theory that's going to be propounded over and over and over again by the defense to make certain that the jury understands that these individuals all have vested interest to testify against Manafort for their own skin in the game.
So, Mercedes, I'm gathering that's kind of your forecast of what's going to happen come week two. Based on that, though, which side do you think is starting from a position of strength? Is it going to be prosecution or defense? And in what direction, apart from what you said, that either will take?
Well, it's a great question. Always when the prosecution begins, because it's an avalanche of information that's being set forth before the jury, and there's lots of documents and there's testimony, you're always going to feel like, oh my God, this is an unsteady ship for the defense. So in the beginning, certainly when it's just the prosecutor's case, it is definitely gamesmanship, a lot of poker face, and not telegraphing to the jury that you're at all concerned. So starting with the defense, sure, they have to do point and counterpoint. Well, aside from what they test so far, this whole theory about the fact that these are individuals that have had this type of arrangement with the prosecutor to save their own skin, that's why they're testifying favorably for the prosecution. You're going to have to do point and counterpoint on those documents. And Rick Gates, we already know there's on the record that apparently he's the individual that has told the accountant to put in false statements in those tax reforms.
And then some reports, David, reads that Rick Gates says that he was following instructions of Manafort. Sure. Also, David Bruno, there are, 23, supposedly on the prosecution's projected evidence list, 23 email exchanges between just Manafort and Rick Gates. How does week two look to you? David.
Yeah, Gates is going to be huge. There was some uncertainty whether or not the government was going to call them initially. There was a question by the judge at one point. The prosecutor said they didn't know. Then they came out and said, we will. Gates is the co-defendant of Manafort in this indictment, a former business partner. The defense opened to the fact that this guy, Gates, was the one that did it all, that Manafort relied on him, he trusted him, and Gates was stealing money so that he was hiding things from him. But the emails that you bring up and the personal expenditures that they got from the Cyprus account are problematic for Manafort, because while he wants the jury to believe that he had a hands-off approach, it's the expenditures and the emails that will rein him in right into that conspiracy that the government wants them to believe.
Interesting points, both of you. Finally, in a short answer, if I could, David, I'll start with you on this one. So far, does it appear that the Manafort trial correlates to the Mueller Russia probe? And part two, does the Mueller probe remain important?
The Manafort trial has nothing to do with Russian interference or Trump, right? Is it going to continue this investigation? Absolutely. Just last week, we heard that Andrew Miller, associate of Roger Stone, will be compelled to testify in the grand jury. And they're also looking to talk to the Russian pop star who had a part in the June 9th meeting in Trump Tower. This is going to continue, unfortunately.
Mercedes, final 30 seconds.
No, exactly right. I mean, it definitely is a play. That's what's being reported. In fact, the judge in this case, in the Manafort trial, was very critical of the special prosecutor being part of this case. So it's clear, at least to this jurist, saying, wait, why are you prosecuting this case? This should have been referred back to the federal prosecutors. It should not have stayed with the special prosecutors. And really, it was that power play of squeezing Manafort to the point that at least the special prosecutor believed there was a possibility that Manafort would flip against the president.
Mercedes.
No, all in all, this has nothing to do with it.
Mercedes Colwin, excuse me. Mercedes, David Bruno, thanks to both of you.
Take care, Othello.
Take care, guys.
Thank you.